Take a breath. Welcome to Space to Exhale, the podcast, weekly inspiration for self-love and soft living. I am your host, Lisa Hurley. I'm a 3-time Anthem Award winner, Reiki master, and community builder. And I'm the author of the book Space to Exhale. Through healing modalities like breathwork, affirmations, and meditations, I'll guide you on a life-changing journey to help you know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and create much-needed space to exhale. Hello, folks, and welcome to Space to Exhale, the podcast, a safe, serene sanctuary where we focus on high vibrations, affirmations, soft living, and self-care. I'm your host, Lisa Hurley. I'm a 3-time Anthem Award-winning activist, a Reiki master, and the author of Space to Exhale, a handbook for curating a soft, centered, serene life. I'm here to help us all do just that. Relax. Take a breath, say no to hustle culture, and yes to a life of ease. My hope and dream is for us all to curate lives that we don't feel we need a break from. Today, I am super excited to introduce to you my guest, Minda Harts. And let me just read to you her bio. Actually, you know what? I'll add her to the stage while I read her bio. Welcome, Minda. I'm just going to let people know who you are, right? I mean, I'm sure
Awesome.
most people know, but just in case they don't. So, Minda Harts is a best-selling author, workplace consultant, and sought-after keynote speaker who's revolutionizing how organizations build trust. Through her groundbreaking 7 Trust Languages framework, she helps leaders and teams create cultures where trust becomes their greatest competitive advantage. As the author of the Memo, Right Within, You Are More Than Magic, and her latest book, Talk to Me Nice, The 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace, Minda has empowered thousands to build stronger workplace relationships and navigate professional challenges with confidence. Her impact spans boardrooms and conference stages worldwide, with companies like Nike, Google, Best Buy, and Zoom calling on her to drive meaningful change through trust building strategies. She's been recognized by LinkedIn as the #1 top voice in the workplace and by Business Insider as one of the top 100 people transforming business. In addition to her speaking and consulting work, Minda is shaping future leaders as an NYU assistant professor and founder of the Memo LLC. When organizations want to transform their communication through trust, they call Minda Harts. Round of applause, round of applause, round of applause. Welcome, Minda.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you. And congratulations on Space to Exhale.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you so much, and congratulations on Talk to Me Nice. Right? It's such a major moment. I mean, this is I don't know, like book number 4, 5, or so. Number 4, right?
Yeah.
Woo! I mean, you have been doing it for a while, and thank you for staying consistent. You gave us the Memo and so many other books, and you just keep delivering what we need.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, and for being here for the culture and for Black and brown people in the workplace. Appreciate you. So before we get started, those of you who have been listening, you know that before we get started with any episode, we ground ourselves with some breath work and an affirmation. Those of you who are new, we ground ourselves first with breath work and an affirmation. So close your eyes. Start slowing your breath down. Relax your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Relax your forehead a bit. You can probably feel some tension there, and relax your eyebrows. And we're going to do 3 deep breaths. And so inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And one more inhale and exhale. Last deep breath, inhale and exhale. Okay, so now that we're a bit more grounded, as you know, Minda's new book is Talk to Me Nice, and I always include an affirmation to ground us for every show. And so today's affirmation, unsurprisingly, right, is I am committed to being trustworthy and building trust in every interaction. So keep that in your mind as we go through this episode and this experience together. And so, Minda, tell the listeners, what led you to develop the 7 trust languages? And I see it has a lovely registration symbol after it, which I love to see. So tell us what led you to develop this framework.
Yeah, well, again, thank you, Lisa, for having me, and thank you for grounding us. I needed that. It's been a bit of a morning, so I thank you for that grounding activity. It's interesting because the work that I have been doing over the last several years had a focus on Black and brown women, women of color in the workplace. And when I decided to write my 4th book, I called it my crossover album, because I wanted to expand the table a bit. But when I really got to the core of it, what I've been doing all this time is trust building work. I just didn't call it that. Right. And so I thought, there's so much going on in the workplace, in and outside the workplace. And the one thing that we all understand is when trust is present, we know that feeling. And when trust is not present, we know that feeling. Trust is a global language. Doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man or a child, we all know that feeling of having trust and not having trust. And so I felt like, let's ground the conversation in respect and trust, because maybe that will help us understand why we weren't able to solve some of these other issues before, because we were trying to get people to walk in our shoes, which they never will. But we do know what feeling low trust environment feels like, right? So for me, I wanted us to be able to get back to a space of some foundational. I think we jumped in the deep end of the pool, Lisa, and not everybody had the right floaties and goggles and all the things on. So I'm like, okay, we got to get back to basics, and back to basics is trust. We can't get to an equitable workplace if we don't trust each other. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg, and that's what I wanted to really dive into is the trust aspect.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And one of the things you do it in all of your books as part of your writing style, and you've done it in this book as well, is you share anecdotes from your life, from your career. Also, there's also always like a running soundtrack. You clearly are a music lover, so there's that as well. But in terms of a story from your life or career, was there one that led you, a specific one that led you to say, okay, I've been thinking about this book, but it needs to happen right now. And this is why. It's because you're going through it. If you're going through it, maybe somebody else is. Was there a story or an experience that led you there?
Yeah, I also thought about the 5 love languages, who many of us know that in our cultural lexicon. And I thought, well, if we have love languages for our romantic and platonic life, what's the language for work, right? And trust was that thing. And I thought back to times in my career where I really appreciated a manager or a colleague demonstrating trust. I tell one story in the book. I have a manager, I call him Harold in the book, and he told us that a layoff was coming, a furlough was coming 6 months before it happened, right? And he was very transparent with us. And I didn't realize how much I valued transparency until it presented itself, right? So he told us what probably shouldn't have been said. He said the quiet part out loud. He said, hey, in 6 months, some of you will be here, some of you won't be. And I don't know who that is yet, but I want you to prepare for what's to come. And I'll never forget how I felt that day, Lisa, sitting in that staff meeting and him preparing us for what's to come, right? And I felt so grateful to have that information, because now I can plot my next path instead of
Yes.
some of my other colleagues who are on a different team and their manager tells them that morning, right? You don't have time to think. And so he put us as human beings first and employees second. And that built so much trust. Was he a perfect manager? No. But in that moment, and as long as he was my manager, I trusted him that he had my best interest in mind. And I think I asked people to think about what's a manager that, you know, you would run through a brick wall for, right? It's because you trusted them, because they demonstrated that day in and day out. And I just think that so many of us have lost sight of what trust means and what it means to be trustworthy in the workplace.
Yes, yes. Thanks for sharing that. That actually reminded me of similar-ish kind of story. It really, what had happened, it was a lifetime ago, and essentially, I was hired. It was supposed to be a full-time role, and I showed up on the day of, and they're like, psych, it's not it's not full-time. You're a freelancer, etc., etc. Okay, so that broke trust. However, the person to whom I reported directly, he had no idea that was going to happen. But what he did was tell me at some point, look, I know that they keep telling you it's coming, the full-time role, it's not coming.
Yeah.
It's not. So it's similar. So it's not going to happen. And so I want you to take time. You're great at what you do. Take time, look for your next role, and go out on, leave on your own terms. So it's similar. And that really, like you said, when a boss, a manager, a leader takes the time to see you and treat you as a human being first, as opposed to a number, as opposed to a line item on a spreadsheet, it makes everything, it makes the hugest difference. And that former boss and I are like we're friends on Facebook, whatever, that kind of thing. So it has long lasting and far reaching consequences, both when trust is built and when it is broken as well. Speaking of which, so what are the signs, especially for Black women and women of color, but really, like you said, crossover album, so it's for everybody, right? So what are the signs, especially the signs that are easy to overlook, that trust has been or is being eroded?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think so many of us have normalized these toxic behaviors inside the workplace that we don't even think about what trust is. I mean, again, we want it in our romantic and platonic relationships. Why wouldn't we want it at a place that we'll spend 90,000 hours of our lives? Trust should be.
And that's most of our lives, to be honest.
Most of our lives, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. I know somebody might have to take another exhale hearing 90,000 hours, right? But
right.
but that is the truth. And it's like, okay, we got to get some trust ushered into this space. And some of the areas that people, I think, don't think about as often, they know when it's happening to them, it feels uncomfortable, but these are erosions of trust. Often, Lisa, people think it's the grand acts, right? The grand acts of betrayal, but it's actually the silent moments that we never talk about, right? So yes, we might talk about the layoffs and the reorganizations. Those are ways that trust is eroded in the workplace, but also the micromanaging, right?
That's a big one.
That's a big one. That is a big one.
It shows because it shows in behavior. It shows in behavior. No matter what someone says, you see the truth in their actions.
Absolutely. So micromanaging. You mentioned one where somebody promises you something in the workplace, dangles that carrot, if you will, and then you never get the carrot, right? It's a mirage. And so, it's not.
Ghost carrot. It's an invisible carrot.
You're like, wait a second, just one more year, one more quarter, and let's talk about it in 6 months. And next thing you know, it's been 10 years. And you're like, wait a second, what happened to that carrot? And those are those erosions of trust, even down to a lot of us work, hybrid or on virtual screens. And it's sometimes people don't have their camera on for various reasons, right? But somebody may see that I'm having a very important conversation. And because I don't know what you're doing over there, I'm thinking that I can't trust you, right? And so there's all these It's less of a trust issue, but more of an expectation gap, right? I expect something of you, which is trustworthy in my view, but because you don't know that, the erosions keep taking place. And it was one of the reasons I wrote this book, Lisa, because I felt like we just didn't have the language to be able to articulate when certain things have happened so that we can course correct. But people can't show you what trust looks like if they don't know what good looks like to you, right? And so getting clear on what we need in the workplace, is that more transparency? Is that more feedback? People can't give you that if they don't know that's what you need.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that segues nicely into, so we've kind of like laid the groundwork. So explain to viewers, outline the 7 trust languages. You've already compared it to, okay, the basis was the 5 love languages, or the idea came from that. We need trust languages for the workplace, but what are the 7 trust languages, and why are they so fundamental to workplace relationships?
So it's funny when I get the opportunity to speak at a lot of different companies, and people have read my books, and so they'll approach me over the years and say, oh, I don't trust my manager, or I don't trust my colleague, or the big one, I don't trust HR, right? So they'll always say that to me. And the more I kept hearing people tell me that, I thought, wait, what's underneath the reason why, right? It's not just trust, but there's something underneath it. And the more I started to ask questions, I'm like, oh, what you really need is clarity and honesty. You need more transparency. Oh, what you really need is intellectual security, or psychological security, or you need that safety and belonging. Oh, what you really need is demonstration, somebody modeling the behavior in which they are doing what they say. Oh, you really need feedback, meaningful and consistent insight. Oh, you really need to be acknowledged, right? See, you need to be seen for your work. Oh, and now one of the next languages, sensitivity. There's so many managers and colleagues that need the language of sensitivity, right? Just because a joke might be funny to me doesn't mean it's going to land that way to somebody else in the room, right? So what you really need is a more empathetic leader or colleague. And lastly, I heard people saying they need more follow through, people keeping their word. If you say you're going to do something, then let me know that. And if you can't do it anymore, then tell me that too. That's still following through. And so I found that no matter what people were saying, it fell in one of these like 7 boxes of what they needed. And I thought, okay, what would it look like to ask for a little more clarity or a little more honesty around your job description? You were hired for a job, and now you've been doing a different job, but you don't trust your manager, but have a conversation and find out what has changed, So again, understanding what I need in the workplace, and the book does that through assessments, but then also the people that we work with. Maybe we're eroding trust unintentionally and we don't even know it, right? So being able to show up, because trust is a 2-way street.
Wow. That is, I love that you put so much thought into it. And I also love that you included, among all of the other trust languages, I love that you included sensitivity. That was actually a pleasant surprise to me when I started delving into the book. I was like, oh, this is not something with the others. I'm like, okay, yes, transparency, security, demonstration, feedback, acknowledgement, follow through. Would not have expected sensitivity to show up there. And I think you probably know why. It sounds like one of the quote unquote, what people call soft skills, which I don't believe that is a real thing, that soft skills are a real thing. I think soft skills are actually hard. they're hard skills, and they're difficult for people to actually implement. Sensitivity is so necessary. I think it is a close cousin of empathy.
Yes.
And so I love that is included in the framework. So actually, hadn't intended to go here, but what are your trust? What are your trust languages? Have you identified yours?
Yes, I have, and it's been fun to find out what people they had not considered what theirs might be. And so there is a quiz inside the book for people to figure that out. But mine, I have 3. And one of them is transparency, feedback, and acknowledgement. So those things really build trust. with me. And, I want to say too about transparency. I think there's a misconception in the workplace, Lisa, that being transparent is telling everybody everything, right? And that's not transparency. Transparency is also saying, this is all the information I have. And when I have more, I'll let you know. Or if you have questions, then feel free to come and ask me, right? But I think that, some people feel, oh, we can't tell everybody everything. Some things you just don't need to know. But also telling people that is, we're just not in a space to have that. That's being transparent. That's going to calm my nervous system a little bit, instead of seeing the smoke coming out of the chimney and then everybody pretending that the smoke is not coming out of the chimney.
That's a very, the emperor's invisible clothes or whatever. Like, no, there's nothing is happening here. What are you even talking about?
Right.
Exactly. I definitely remember a situation where, again, long story, but a company I worked with was going through some issues, as they do. And one of my colleagues was they were upset that management had not shared certain details, including some financial ones, right? And while I understood my colleague's feelings, I, pulled her aside and I said, look, certainly, especially when you get to a certain level of management, you actually have a fiduciary and legal duty to not reveal certain information, right? And so sometimes someone in senior management not sharing something, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. But to your point, had senior management just said, we cannot share, we legally cannot share this, but here's what's happening at a high level, that would have created, like you said, regulated everyone's nervous systems a little bit and helped them breathe a little easier, for sure.
Yeah.
So a lot of the framework and the work that you've laid out for us and provided us with in this book sounds like it has a grounding in emotional intelligence. Like I said, what folks would call the soft skills, which I believe this, like I said, the soft skills are the hard skills. So what made you go basically ground your work in an emotional intelligence model versus, which is very a reciprocal model, a model of transparency and reciprocity, whereas a lot of books talk about transactional. You do this for me, I do this for you, that sort of relationship. So what made you go like hard 180 in the other direction?
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. I went really hard that direction because I believe that the future of work is understanding the human element. We can't take that away, right? The human element is so important in our connection. And I think that it's important for us to, again, remind each other that we're not robots, right? That we do have feelings, we do have thoughts, and we all just want to do the best work of our career, but we can't do that when there's a lot of barriers, right? So, but the other part of it is we don't have the space to be able to talk about what those barriers are. And so my hope is that through the new book, Talk to Me Nice, that people have the language to be able to remove those barriers, for themselves, but then for others, right? Because again, trust might be there at 10 a.m. and then somebody does something or says something unintentionally or intentionally, and it's gone by 10:10. Right? That happens all day long. And we don't say anything. We don't do anything. We just kind of side eye each other all day long. And nobody knows what the erosion was. Right? And so what would it look like if we talked about it in a way that is respectful? Right? How do we enhance trust instead of eroding trust? And I feel like, again, trust isn't necessarily the issue at work. We have a communication crisis. We no longer know how to talk to each other. We don't consider the nuance in situations. We create narratives that may or may not be true based on our interactions with somebody. And I'm like, okay, let's just flip the table over and restart it with some respect, humanity, and dignity, right?
Back to the basics, because honestly, when you have, like you said, respect, honesty, trust, those like basics, the basics are the foundation of the house. Right. I did a post the other day about, houses, some kinds of houses in Barbados that are, for various reasons, they're not built on a solid foundation. No house, organization, whatever you want to call it, if the foundation is shaky, the rest of it is at some point, it is going to either literally topple, or there'll always just be a sense of insecurity, a lack of security, lack of psychological safety, and all of that ties into a lack of trust. And being able to relax at work, and that probably sounds like an oxymoron, like it's work, you're not supposed to be relaxing, but I know you understand what I mean. Yes, there's work to do. So you go in and you do what needs to be done, but you do it from a perspective where you're not in fight or flight, what was it? Fight, fright, fleas, freeze, fawn. Right. You're
Yeah.
not in any of those states. You can relax mentally and psychologically and show up as your best self.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that should be afforded to all of us, right?
Yes.
Some people, you shouldn't have to be sitting in your favorite chair at home or in the office and wondering who's going to attack you today and all of those things, right? And again, I think that if trust can be broken, it can also be rebuilt, but we need the language to be able to demonstrate, trust has to be a noun and a verb, right? And I think sometimes in the workplace, we just show up with our titles and we think, oh, trust is automatically here. And no, trust is built each and every day. Trust is not a one-time event. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle.
I love that. Trust is a culture and a lifestyle. So once somebody identifies their trust languages, let me put them back up so everybody can see them again. And again, these 7 trust languages are transparency, security, demonstration, feedback, acknowledgement, sensitivity, and follow through. So once somebody has identified their trust language and start to work with it, like how do they then show up? It's like, okay, so you come in, right? Somebody, right? All the companies, right? Hire Minda, right? to come in and consult about the trust languages. You come in, you do your course and your you do your work, right? And so how do you help people then implement that? So after you leave, right, and you've done the training, the next day when you're not there to guide them through, how do people actually implement on their own?
Yeah. So the lovely thing that I like about this book that's probably a little bit different than my last books is I pretty much give it play by play on how, let's say, for example, sensitivity is somebody's primary trust language. And then you might find that you have a secondary or a tertiary trust language. And so maybe sensitivity is an issue. Maybe you work with someone who's always telling the joke that nobody needs to hear between 8 and 5 or ever. But they think they're the funny person in the office. They're always saying the thing, but it's impacting you because a lot of the jokes tend to be about, your community or whatever that is. And, a good example of that in culture right now is that there's a lot of backlash against Gen Z, right? In terms of how they show up, and so many people have so many bad things to say about Gen Z, right? And this is where we need to build trust with various generations. And so what would it look like for us to be a little more culturally sensitive to how they've been socialized, right? Yeah. Certain ways in which they get to use their voice that may have taken us 20 years to ask for a raise. And they're like, I've been here for 6 months. What are we waiting on? Right? They're asking, they're moving in a different way. Does it mean that it's wrong? Does it mean that it's right? But they're not going to trust us from other generations if we don't build relationships with them and try to understand what they are. So instead of saying you guys don't like to work or you don't understand workplace culture, what would it look like to be sensitive and be a mentor or a coach to say, yeah, I understand why you're asking for that, but here, this is how things kind of work. Let me show you the ropes, right? It feels better. It sounds better. And I also give you step-by-step on how you implement those things. I give sample scripts on, okay, you can't just walk up to a person who doesn't know what a trust language is and say, give me more sensitivity, but you can give examples, root your conversations in fact, right? Point to examples that are tangible, not that, oh, I don't feel like you like me. No, in last week's meeting, you said X, Y, and Z, and I just wanted to understand what you meant by that, right? Because I understand you weren't trying to erode trust, but this is how it came to me, and I wanted to have a conversation about it. We are all adults in the workplace, but it's not what we say, but how we say it. And I think if we speak to each other with humanity and dignity, even on those tough conversations, we can still uphold our integrity and somebody else's dignity.
Wow, that is beautiful. And I do love that you provide scripts, because a lot of people identify the what without saying, okay, but here's the how. Here's the how. And even let's say, so someone has followed your script, but maybe they don't completely like implement it to the letter, and something goes awry. So when trust is broken, whether it's between individuals, individual colleagues, or an organization to its employee base, what is the first step toward repair and healing? What first step should anyone take? Maybe let's start with one-on-one, one colleague to another, or manager direct report relationship.
Yeah. I also want to acknowledge that when trust is broken and the power dynamics are different, right, from your manager,
Yes.
your manager might be the one causing the problems, or HR, you're having the issue there. And so I also give scripts for when somebody doesn't show up the way you want them to, and how you respond to that.
Yes.
But what I will say is, I think most people want to create space for us to work well together. I think most people do, but the issue is we don't all have the same tools for conflict resolution. And so what I would first do is identify, what is it that you need to feel that trust is present in the workplace? And once you identify what your trust languages are, whatever the person that is causing kind of the pain point, root the conversation in the facts. So for example, let's say that I find that feedback is really important to me, but I work for somebody who never gives me any feedback. I've done like 10 projects. I don't know if they've been done well or not. Nothing's taken place. And I don't necessarily have the kind of relationship with my manager to ask for it, or I'm nervous to ask for it, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, okay, how can how can they provide me feedback if they don't know that that's what's needed for me, right? And maybe I didn't even realize that. So long story short is, I can, instead of going to my manager and saying, you never give me any feedback, I don't know if I'm doing good, I don't know if I belong, they're going to be on the defense, right?
Yeah.
So what would it look like to say, okay, just wanted to chat with you because I just finished up this project and went really well. I felt good about it, but I wanted to know how you feel, because the last 3 projects I completed, you haven't given me any feedback. Is that something we can partner? I really value when you offer me feedback on these projects, because then I know if I'm headed the right direction, and I want to keep getting better each and every sprint. That manager is going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that, right? And I think that's part of it. We create these narratives that people don't want us to be successful, but half the time they have 90,000 things they're doing. They're not thinking about us and what just eroded.
This is true. People are going through, and before you and I, started the show officially, we were chatting about this a bit backstage, is that there is so much happening in the world right now, so much happening in the US, and that is sort of bleeding out into the rest of the world, affecting everyone globally. And people have a lot going on. They have a lot on their minds, and there's just exponentially more stress. I think a lot of us thought, okay, COVID happened, and that's probably like the high point of stress and chaos that the world is going to experience. And then other things happened, and here we are. So also, and I don't know if this ties into the sensitivity trust language, but just having that awareness that maybe, just maybe, somebody's whatever you might think they're going through has nothing to do with you, right? Or they might just be under a huge weight of stress that you know nothing about. And so lead with some sensitivity, lead with some empathy, ask a question, lead with, hey, are you okay? Depending on your relationship, of course. You seem a little, not like your usual self. Is everything okay? Just want to check in on you. That is something that can help to build relationships and let people know, hey, I see you as a human being and I care about you in that way. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Lisa, because, back to the sensitivity, people will say, well, does it take all that? Just get back to work, right? We're seeing a lot of dialogue around CEOs just saying, be happy you have a job. And it's like, okay, 2 things can be true at the same time. I can be grateful for the work that I have, but I can also work be more productive when trust is present. And the data shows that when trust is present, we're 21% more productive. There's 50% more retention, right? 50% less burnout. And so trust isn't just, ooh, let me wrap myself in a trust blanket and do a trust ball. No, trust is good for business, And so I think that we have to understand that people will be more productive when they aren't fearful, right? Or when they can have conversations. But to be like, oh, just get back to work. Okay, return to office. I understand that maybe it's no longer sustainable for everybody to work from home anymore. But let's talk about the why. Listen, we have all these buildings and we're losing money every single day. We need everybody back. But let's talk about a plan that you now don't live in the same state. Let's plan 8 months to get you transitioned back into the state in which you can live. Like, there's so many ways that we can have better conversations with each other that keep trust at the center. And I just feel like so many leaders right now are playing in the Wizard of Oz as the cowardly lion. And we don't need that type of, we don't need those type of leaders right now.
No, we don't. And it's so, this is such a good topic. And it's funny that you mentioned trust falls. When I was looking through initially to see, I just want to check in SpaceX, say, like, how many times do I mention the word trust? I was just like interested, right? I mentioned it a few times, but when I came across one paragraph that said, a sentence that said, well, how am I going to do a trust fall with somebody that just stabbed me in the back, right? And that's basically like the foundation of what you're talking about. Like, the you have to be able to trust people, trust their behavior, and it can't be performative. And you also talked about the link between trust, psychological safety, and being able to relax and rest at work. And so while we're here, I want to read people who, all my listeners, my stalwarts who join every week know that I read a short excerpt from the book every week. And so, of course, I'm a big fan. I met him like, I'm mentioning Minda in my book, but not just because, obviously I wanted to, but your work is relevant, right? And so I do mention about, the need to be able to curate your career with wisdom. And I think that trust ties into rest, because that's how, if you have trust, work does not have to be constantly stressful, and it doesn't have to be something, you mentioned burnout earlier, it doesn't have to be something that you burn out from. So I'll read this excerpt and then we'll dive back into the conversation. So this one is from chapter 8. It's called Curate Your Career. So how to curate your career. So this book is about making choices. It's about curating your life so that it operates to your benefit. Sorry, I completely messed up because I'm a human being. So I'm going to start again, right? This book is about making choices. It's about curating your life so that it operates to your benefit and frees you to enjoy greater ease. The curation process is one of examination, interrogation, selection, and implementation. So you end up with an exhibit, your life, that is pleasing to your spirit, supportive to your mind, and healthy for your body. Because adulting is a scam and capitalism is a hater, our professions play an enormous role in our existence on this earth. So much so that we can't truly redesign our lives without considering what kind of career we want and how to approach it so that we succeed in whatever way we define success. There are entire books written on this subject, targeted specifically to Black women and women of color. The Memo by Minda Harts is an excellent one. Harts makes the undisputable point that if a traditional career is what you truly want, then you must play the game according to the rules that have been established, because patriarchy and white supremacy aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Until changes are made at a systemic level, it is what it is. She's 100% right. For some of us, including me at one point, that is the path we desire. We enjoy the daily joust, the thrust and parry, the schemes and strategies. We enjoy proving the naysayers wrong and proving our cheerleaders right. We want to ascend the corporate ladder and eventually sit pretty in the C-suite. And that is perfectly okay. We are allowed to want what we want. We are allowed to seek success in whatever ways are meaningful to us. We are also allowed to change our minds about how we define success. Space to Exhale is about exactly that: pausing to reflect, taking a breath, and choosing a different path. As the years have passed, my definition of success has evolved. To paraphrase James Baldwin, I do not dream of labor. For me, rest is the new success. And so, yes, Minda. People
Yes.
might wonder, okay, well, what's the tie again between rest and space to exhale and the trust languages? It's because when you have that trust, when you have that trust, you can relax and show up as your best self. When you have that trust, you don't have to burn out. I mentioned here about enjoying what I call the daily joust, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, wondering if somebody is scheming behind your back, wondering what management is up to, all of those things. When you are in that state, you are not in a state of trust and relaxation. And no matter whether you think you are showing up as your best self, I guarantee you that you are not. I guarantee you that
Period.
you're not.
Period. I mean, there's a statistic out there, Lisa, and with the work you do, I'm sure you're aware of this, but maybe this will be new for some of from the listeners. Is over 40 million in America. 40 million people suffer from anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that the workplace is the root cause of that, but I guarantee if we had more ease and spaces to exhale inside the workplace, there'd be less people feeling that anxiousness or those Sunday scaries, Monday scaries, right? And so we don't have to have toxic workplaces. Let's unnormalize those toxic behaviors for success. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Because Space to Exhale is about an approach not just for work and for life. And so I see what you have written as, you're like, well, let's create some space to exhale in our organizations, in our relationships, in our, with our colleagues, and really dive into, the psychological safety of it all, because psychological safety is a form of rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, speaking of that, how have you, because you've been doing this work for a while. I know, and I know how books go. It's like people see, oh, well, Minda's published a book and think that it just happened. Like, you've probably been working on it, I would imagine, for years, if not months, if not years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how have you experienced rest as you were, reading, as you were writing this book, continuing your career, continuing your consulting work? How did you experience these 7 trust languages and rest and psychological safety in your own career?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I pitched the book 2 years ago. And so, Lisa, yes, trust is always important. It should never go out of style, but I didn't know we'd be in the workplace climate that we would be in, and just the climate in general. And so trust inside, outside the workplace is so important. And what I would say is, as writing this book, I was more aware of myself. I was able to put a mirror up to myself and say, am I demonstrating trustworthy behaviors, right? Because it's easy to say somebody else isn't doing the right things, or they're eroding. It's easy to say you. But what about me? How can I show up as a better? So I'm writing these languages, right? And I'm like, oh crap, I could be more transparent. I could provide more. Like when somebody tells me, prime example, a friend of mine was telling me a story that happened to them. And I was like, oh, it's okay. Don't get been out of shape about it. It's fine. And they're like, well, how would you feel? I said, I wouldn't care. I would move on with my day. And it stopped me in my tracks, because I needed the language of sensitivity. They were sharing with me, being vulnerable about something that bothered them. And how often do we dismiss somebody's feelings, right? Because it's not bothering me, so why are you tripping, right? And those are those moments for erosion. And again, it's unintentionally. We think we're saying the right thing sometimes. And I had to go back and apologize to them and say, you know what? I'm sorry that I wasn't as sensitive to how you feel. Yes, it didn't bother me in the same way, but you are a different person. And let's talk about ways that maybe we can demonstrate. And I have to continuously demonstrate the language of sensitivity, because I don't get ruffled as much as other people do on certain topics, right? And again, it's one of those things where we can even be day to day our better selves. And again, I hope that the 7 trust languages inside and outside the workplace will help us understand those ways in which we get to recommit to humanity and dignity each and every day, the way that we engage with people.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, similarly to you, I have also, you write a book and listen, the book comes to snatch your edges sometimes. Right? Then you're like, oh, okay, maybe, like you said, maybe I need to do better. Maybe I need to do better. Maybe like you said, I could be more sensitive or, more transparent. I sometimes get that because I'm an introvert. And so I have a lot of conversations inside. That sounds bad, but in my head.
I have them too. So I'm an introvert too. Okay.
Right. So I have a lot of like internal mental conversations, and sometimes I don't even realize that I'm not expressing them verbally. And so, some of my friends have said, "Oh, well, I didn't realize that XYZ was going on. Why didn't you tell me?" And I was like, I don't know. It wasn't on purpose,
Yeah.
And but realizing that my friends want to know. My friends are interested and they really care. And so trying to remember to come out of my head and actually express, thoughts or say when I need help or, whatever it happens to be. Because, that's important. Like it would be a really, really good exercise just for, I know you wrote the book for the workplace, but like you said, it's like, love languages, but in just for non-romantic, for platonic relationships, professional relationships, but for friends.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, please tell me there's going to be like a 7 love languages deck or something, because that has got to happen, right?
Yeah.
That would be absolutely amazing for people to sort of interact with the trust languages, in non-professional environments, like curated environments or environments where there is some structure, but where it's more casual and they can, maybe a group of friends laughing together, sharing about what their trust languages are. That would be absolutely awesome.
Well, thank you for saying that. I actually created a game called the Trust Catalyst that I've been playing at different companies to get people, and it involves cards and trust shifts, and it gives people familiar. So they may not have read the book yet, but we're flexing that skill, right? That skill of understanding what trust languages and how they show up and how we can exercise those. And it's also funny. I think you're reading into the future, Lisa, but I've been getting a lot of emails. The book's only been out a couple weeks, but I've been getting emails from people who have started reading the book, and they're like, you know what? This is actually good for family too. Yes. I'm going to start thinking about how I can use these in a family, and I hadn't considered it in that way. So,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All I'm seeing is brand extension. The marketer in me is very excited for you, because to your point that you mentioned at the top of the show that you created your crossover album, right?
Yeah.
And so you really have done that. And yes, your primary audience initially, Black women, black and brown people, Black and brown women, but this is truly for everyone. Like you said, it is a global language. Everyone understands that feelings of trusting, having trust in a situation or with someone, or the inverse. And so this really, oh my gosh, you kind of like, you've done brand extensions with your books before, right?
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, talk to me nice for teens, and talk to me nice for listen. I'm so ready. I am so ready for them all, because this work is interesting. So something that we mentioned before we came on stage was that the details of our work might be different, but there's a similar foundation, because what you are doing, what you have done, and what you're doing is healing work. Right. And yes, I know Talk to Me Nice is a business book and so on and so forth. And that is how it is categorized. But it actually expands way beyond that genre, So you really have truly created your crossover album. And I'm just looking forward to seeing all of the fabulousness that results from it.
Well, thank you again. Thank you for seeing me. I appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, This is kind of related to what we were just talking about it not being the trust languages not only being for work, right? So let's say, because work is such a big part of all of our lives. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say the 7 trust languages, it's X number of years into the future. Certain people are no longer president. And the 7 trust languages are like fully embedded in workplace culture globally, in workplace culture, in political culture, and so on. How do you see the world feeling and looking differently now, with the 7 trust languages sort of like in global organizational DNA?
Yeah. Um, so I'm an optimist, and I feel as though sometimes we just need that little switch to click in our head and be like, oh, I didn't realize that that was the thing that we've been needing to talk about on a larger scale. And so for me, I'm really excited about the 7 trust languages being kind of what the 5 love languages were in our cultural zeitgeist, but using this as a
Yes.
framework so that people can root crisis or misunderstandings in facts and recover, right? Because it's not enough for us to say, you know what, we just have bad workplaces and your boss is going to erode your trust, HR is going to erode your trust. No, that is not okay. Let's redefine what success looks like. Let's
Mhm.
redefine what working
Yes.
together looks like. Let's redefine how we engage and have better conversations. And I hope that I will, at the end of it all, Lisa, that people will say and point to me being as part of that catalyst, part of that work, right? And so for me, I just feel like when I was writing my former books, like the Memo and Right Within, there were a lot of people who would read it and they'd never know, they never experienced racism or sexism or ageism in the workplace. So they couldn't really understand it. They got it from kind of the outside
An
looking in,
intellectual perspective.
right?
Yes,
But
yes, yes. Not
the
not experientially, but
not
intellectually.
experience, very good. And so I realized that, you know what? How can I get you to see me as a human first? And it's that trust. So if you're in Tokyo, you want trust. If you're in North Dakota, you want trust. If you're in Barbados, you want trust.
Mm,
We can root it all. We all can sit at the table and talk about when trust is high, when trust isn't there, and how we can make it better. And I feel like once we have those better conversations, we get to the ageism, we get to the sexism, we get to the other isms that are taking place, but we have to start with the T. There's no future. The word future, if we take the T out, it's not future. But with
mhm.
we add that T back in, it's the trust. It's the future that we get to have going in. And I just want us to have a future where everybody gets to do their best work without barriers. And so if we show up better and implement trust, even if we make a mistake 10 minutes later, when you and me log off, we might erode some trust with somebody. But it's how we get back in the game,
Yes.
and it's how we demonstrate that we're trustworthy each and every day. And we get to do that. And that's a privilege.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. And yes, we do get to make choices every day, every second, to be honest. And I love that you mentioned that. I mean, the likelihood is, like, even look, just now, I'm reading from my own book and I make a mistake.
Yep,
Mistakes are going to happen,
they're
right?
going to happen.
Mistakes are going to happen. So the goal is not even really to avoid mistakes fully. And that is impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because perfection is impossible. Do you want to do better? Absolutely. So yes, the mistake might happen, but then you get back up, dust yourself off, and you start again. So yes, if maybe you realize you have not been as transparent as you could be, you have not been as sensitive as you could be, you have not followed through. Let me just put the 7 trust languages back up so people remember what we're talking about again. So the 7 trust languages: transparency, security, demonstration, feedback, acknowledgement, sensitivity, and follow through. So yes, it's likely that you're gonna slip up, but then you have this book, you have the framework, you have the why, you have the how, you have all the scripts, right? So that you provided that for all of us, so that we can, it's easier for us to do better. And I truly, truly appreciate that. And so before we wrap up, we're a few minutes out. What is one or two small things that listeners can start doing today before. And of course, all of y'all know and I'm pointing my finger like an auntie. Go and buy this book. Go and buy Talk to Me Nice. That's number one, right? That's your number one to do. But if for people who have not yet purchased the book, right? What is one small thing that people can start doing today as soon as they log off, to get closer to building trust in their professional lives, but also in their personal lives?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. And also, you need both of the books, Lisa's book and this book, together, okay? And if you are not having the time to read, I also am the reader for the Audible book. So if you're not tired of my voice yet, go ahead and get it on Audible. But what I will say is that two things. I think you hit it perfectly, Lisa, when you said that this isn't about a shame game. This isn't about blaming ourselves or blaming us about. This is about just getting better. What do we got to do to get better, to be a better colleague, to be a better, work wife, work husband, whatever it is, a better, HR partner in the workplace? How do we do that? And each and every day we are tasked with a decision to make. So when you make that next decision in the next hour, next 15 minutes, next week, think about it. Is this decision going to enhance trust or erode trust? Mm-hmm. And if we take a beat to be able to say, if I CC somebody on this email, do they really need to be CC'd, or do I just need to send it to the person that it's going to? What's my intention?
Can we talk about it though? Can we talk about the CC police? Because I cannot. I don't understand it. I got in trouble. I remember this at work for not CCing somebody. I'm like, why? They did not need to be. And it was not a question of not being transparent. It was like, I'm thinking I'm saving this person's inbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes. So anyway, sorry. Clearly, I know I ranted, but that
was a trigger, right? But am I CCing this person's manager because I want to get them in trouble, or do I need to have a conversation with this person first before I involve their manager? We all can be in a situation where we're not thinking about how this impacts people. If I let that person say the joke that they always say in the team meeting, and I don't do anything to stop it, am I enhancing trust with my team or eroding trust with my team? Right? So let's ask ourselves the decisions that we make, take a pause and say, how's this going to impact the person on the other end? Mm-hmm. Right? How would humanizing their experience and how they'll receive this information, or do we need to have a little more context, or do I need to pick up the phone instead of sending the email? Right? So think about the things that we can do to make the person on the receiving end of our experience better. And I think if we're all doing that, Lisa, then we make the workplace better than we found it. We make our worlds better than we found it. And I don't expect that all of us will speak all 7 languages, but if we all pick one and enhance that, think about how we make the space better if we're all being a little more sensitive, a little more acknowledging somebody's good work, right? A little goes a long way.
Let me ask you, I know we're basically at time, but let me ask you another question. So I know everybody will have their primary, secondary, tertiary trust languages. Is there, of all 7, is there like one foundational one? I know this is a hard question because you're like, no, we need all 7. We need all 7. But the answer might be no. But is there like one foundational one that you think this is a good place for people to start with?
I'm going to double down on sensitivity. I think we can be more empathetic, especially in the country right now. We don't all have to see policies and laws the same, but we can still treat people with humanity and respect. Right? We may not, somebody listening right now, we may or may not have voted for the same person. We may not have the same value system, right? But what we should all have is that I don't want to take someone's dignity away from them. I don't want to intentionally harm anybody else. So do I need to wear the hat in this environment? Do I need to wear the shirt in this environment? Or what's that going to signal to the people on my team, right? Who may not feel the same way I do about a certain thing. We can all be more sensitive emotionally and culturally. Last I'll say is, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't watch the news anymore. if you're a manager or a leader or a colleague, it's important. You have to watch it all day long, but find out what's going on, because that's going to make sure that you're not saying the thing in the meeting
Right.
that might be, toxic, or, maybe today we don't have the one-on-one or the performance evaluation because that person just had something happen in their community that's on my team. So what would it look like for me to say, you know what, Minda, I noticed there's a lot going on in whatever in DC right now. Let's wait to have our conversation next week. Let's touch base then.
Yes.
I'm being more sensitive. I'm being emotionally intelligent, right?
Yes.
That costs us nothing, but it enhances so much trust.
Yes. And you're creating psychological safety, an experience of psychological safety for them, for your employees.
We're speaking two languages now: sensitivity and security.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Minda, thank you so much. We are at time. This conversation could have gone on a lot longer. There's so much to delve into, but thank you so much for being here. This absolutely was a wonderful conversation and much needed. Like I said, it is, the 7 trust languages for the workplace, but let me tell you, this is about so much more, because trust is foundational to every single human interaction, regardless of context.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to encourage all of you, those of you who are team replay, go back, listen to and watch the entire thing. There's so much that you're going to learn, and make sure, of course, that you get a copy or a few copies of Talk to Me Nice by Minda Harts. And so with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining me on Space to Exhale, the podcast. Make sure you tune in every Tuesday on LinkedIn live to catch the vibes. And if you can't make the live show, though I'd love for you to, but if you can't, that's no problem. Subscribe on Spotify and YouTube to catch the replay. And if you want to dive deeper into what Minda and I were discussing today, like I said, get a copy of her book. It is called Talk to Me Nice. It is available everywhere on all major book resellers and book retailers. Of course, also go to mindaharts.com for additional information. And definitely, show some love to your girl as well. Get a copy of Space to Exhale. Go to spacetoexhalebook.com. It's available, like Minda's, available everywhere. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Goodreads, everywhere, wherever books are sold. And if you have already purchased a copy of both books, let us know what you think, right? Just hop onto the internet, right? Write us a review. Let us know what you think. And so that's it. Goodbye for now. And remember, I always sign off by saying this. I really want you to remember this. And I'm going to add one more. You're worthy of rest. You are worthy of trust. You are worthy of love. And you are worthy of having time and space to exhale. Thank you. Goodbye. And I'll see you next week.